It's been well over a month since I did my last sewing project. Not really had any sewing motivation or really motivation to create content in general. I feel like slowly I'm getting out of that place. And today I have an idea for a sewing project. Before we get into it, if you're new here, hi, I'm Olga and I make sewing and crafting content that is usually vintage inspired and sometimes a little bit nerdy. So here's my idea. I still have a bunch of this fabric left and I think it would make a really cute little blouse, like something for spring. I want a big, like oversized Peter Pan collar with maybe some frill on it. I haven't decided on the frill yet, but we will figure that one out as we go along. And I want some sleeves. You know I like a big sleeve. It's not a surprise to anyone. I know this is like probably a bit of a boring project. I've done so many blouses already. I feel like sewing. I haven't felt like sewing in like 2 months. I want to do something that's like fun for me, something that's easy, hopefully get me back into the mood for sewing, help me like with this weird headspace that I'm in, you know? I am going to use, I've used this pattern so many times. This is McCall's 8161 and yeah, the bodice on this is really great on me. It fits really well. I really like it. So I'm gonna use this bodice as is. And then I'm thinking of using the basic sleeve from Gertie's Ultimate Dress Book because it's just like a super basic sleeve. And then adding a bit extra onto that so that I can have a poofier sleeve. Yeah, that's the plan for this. I'm gonna be listening to Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I think that's what her name is. It's been so popular on Instagram and TikTok. I'm finally giving it a go.
As it turns out, I did have an oversized Peter Pan collar already drafted for this specific blouse, so I could get straight to cutting my fabric. This print is directional, so I had to keep that in mind when I was pinning my pattern pieces to the fabric. I added 5 centimeters to each side of the sleeves along the side seams to add that extra poof. Then I cut everything out, and I have to say I missed the sounds of the scissors snipping fabric. As I cut my pieces, I also took the time to cut out the notches on each of them. Next, I transferred my darts over to the fabric. I have little holes poked through the marks on the pattern so that I can easily poke my pen through the paper, and then I connect the dots when I remove the pattern paper. I repeat that for the other dart, and then I pin them flat as I always do. With the front done, I repeat that same process for the back pieces. Then I moved on to pinning everything else I could. First, I pinned the facings together at the shoulders with right sides together, matching the notches. I've learned I always need notches on facings because for some reason I will get them mixed up if I don't have that indication. Next, I pinned the cuffs closed along the short seam, again with right sides together. Then I pinned the sleeves closed too. I also pinned the collar pieces together along the outer edges. There's 4 pieces, 2 layers per side of the collar, so you're making 2 sets. If the top was totally closed at the back, like say for a button-down shirt, you could join the collar at the back and then you'd only have 2 pieces for the collar. But in this instance, I need to leave an opening at the top of the back. so that I can get my head in, and the collar needs to be in 2 separate halves. Anyway, once all of those things are pinned, it's time to sew them all. The seam allowance for this pattern is 1.5 centimeters or 5/8 of an inch, and that's the same amount I add to all my self-drafted patterns too for consistency. When sewing the darts, I start at the wide part of the dart and then I follow the marked line to the tip where I leave a long thread tail. I tie off the threads at the tip of the darts a few times and trim off the excess, leaving about 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters. I also trimmed the excess seam allowance off the edges of the collar to reduce bulk once I turn it right side out.
I think things are going well. The sleeves are sewn up on the underarm seam. Cuffs, got my darts done. Got the collar also stitched up and the facings. So now I'm gonna do a round of pressing. Actually, I should finish the raw edges first before I press stuff. I think I'm gonna zigzag. I don't feel like setting up my other sewing machine. And then I want to press everything before I move on to next steps. So
since I decided to finish my edges with a zigzag stitch, I need to trim them before going over them on the machine. Once I pressed all those seams and darts, I remembered that I needed to finish the outer edge of the facings too, so I did that real quick before moving on to the next step. With that done, I pinned the cuffs to the sleeves. There was a bit of extra fabric, but not that much, so I did a little tuck instead of gathering. I also pinned the back pieces together along the center back. I made sure to only pin up to the mark for the opening, and when I sewed that down, I went back and forth over that spot a couple of times to make sure the stitches stay in place with wear. I carefully stitched the sleeves to the cuffs too and tried not to stab myself with the pins, since this is the type of seam that usually gets me stabbed on a pin. Next, I trimmed the excess seam allowance off the cuffs and the center back and zigzagged the edges of both. For the center back seam, I zigzagged the edges together up to the opening, and then I finished the edges of the opening separately. When pressing those seams, I made sure to press the seam allowance on the raw edge of the cuff so that I can pin it down just over the seam. Then I pinned the front and back together along the shoulders and sides with right sides together, making sure to match the notches. I stitched all those seams down, then trimmed and zigzagged them before pressing them towards the back. My next step was to pin the collar pieces in place, lining up the fronts with the center front of the top. Then I pinned the facings over the collar with right sides together, matching the shoulder seams to the top as well as the notches, effectively sandwiching the collar in between the facings and the top. And of course, I stitched that down, trimmed the excess, zigzagged the raw edge, and pressed it all in place. Then I stitched the folded edges of the cuffs down by hand, making sure to keep my stitches invisible on the right side of the fabric. I also took this time to tack the facings down to the seam allowance of the shoulder seams on the inside so it doesn't flap out of the garment when I wear it. To finish the little opening at the back, I folded over the remaining excess seam allowances on the facings and the opening edge, and I pinned them down and top stitched that all in place. I made sure to go around the whole thing to make sure that all the raw edges will remain firmly on the inside of the garment. Before I moved on, I also added a little hook and eye closure. To attach the sleeves, I started by matching the underarm seam on the sleeve to the side seam on the bodice and pinning out from there. I also made sure to double check I am matching the notches so that I don't end up with the sleeves on the wrong side of the top. When I get to the shoulder cap where all my excess fabric is, I did a series of little tucks so that all the extra volume will be concentrated at the shoulder. I repeat that for both sleeves and then I stitch it down, again taking it slow and trying not to stab myself. Then I trimmed the excess seam allowances, zigzagged the edges on the machine, and pressed those seams with the help of my tailor's ham. While pressing the sleeves, I also press up the hem of the top twice, and last but not least, I top stitch that in place.
Here we are, wrap up time. Yeah, I'm really happy with how this turned out. It's a super simple blouse. It's so cute. I can wear giraffes every day now. Well, not every day, but you know, a lot more. A couple of things I wish I'd done differently. One of them is I wish I'd thought of the direction of the print better with the collar, because it turns out that the print is upside down on the front. It is right way up at the back, and there's a lot of really good pattern matching, which was totally accidental, but you know, fun. I would rather have the pattern upside down at the back, but you know, it is what it is. And the other thing is I wish I'd made the cuffs a little bit tighter so that I would have a little bit more like poofiness at the wrist. But otherwise, I think it turned out really cute. I love it. This fabric is really, really soft, so that really makes it super comfortable. And I think I have some ideas for other sewing things in the near future. So that's it. If you haven't already, you can consider subscribing to my channel. You can also consider following me on like Instagram and TikTok. I post on there a little bit more regularly. That's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.